Hello, I am Jay Bartoleben, and this is number 0827, the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File Program, number 0827. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File Program, Brian Graff is the CEO and founder of Solar Forma Design. They have managed to create artful solar panels that also take up a very small footprint.
I was wondering if there was a way that we could marry art with technology and create something that was a little more amenable to human spaces and more complement. It turns out that there was another entity out there that had been gathering sunlight and turning it into energy for a very long time, about 3.8 billion years, and that was Mother Nature. The acacia tree of Africa is a very iconic symbol of the African savanna, actually is perfectly adapted to doing just that, gathering a lot of sunlight, turning it into energy, yet keeping a very small footprint underneath.
Dr. Philip Agrios is the author of Life's One Law. After 30 years of searching, he claims he has the answer for turning off one's self-sabotage.
And when I first discovered it, I was like, there's no way, this is too simple. So I went out to try to disprove it. And what I discovered and proved was that this trait is a biological trait. It doesn't undermine us, it actually protects us from the very success that we seek, because that success subconsciously stops us because it's going to be more painful to achieve and to sustain. So we go back doing what we're doing over and over again. And then over the years of researching thousands and thousands of people over those 30 years, I found a way to switch it off instantly, and it works 100% of the time.
Stuart Nullman is in with another edition of Book Banter.
Hi, I'm Stuart Nullman, and with summer here, I have 5 books to recommend for your beach, balcony, or vacation reading over the next 3 months. It will be some hot reading fun in the summertime, and it's happening soon on the Stuff File Program.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0827, was Jay Bartoleben, a freelance web developer and radio programmer. Thank you very much, Jay, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File Program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. Czech police have charged a 22-year-old fake dentist and 2 assistants for treating patients without a license. The trio operated an illegal clinic in their home where the young man conducted extractions, root canals, and administered anesthesia based on internet instructions.
I am your dentist, and I enjoy the career that I picked. I'm your dentist, and I get off on the pain I inflict.
The group, including a 50-year-old nurse and a 44-year-old prosthetic device producer, made approximately 4 million Czech koruna, that's close to $190,000 US, from their activities. All 3 pled guilty to charges including operating an illegal business, money laundering, and drug dealing. The Czech Dental Chamber president noted an average of 10 fake dentist cases reported annually in the country. The trio faces up to 8 years in prison. Wow. I bet they're all now down in the mouth.
Say, now spit!
Police dashcam footage recorded officers confronting Jathan Gilder, a convicted jewel thief, as he attempted to swallow stolen Tiffany & Company diamonds valued at $770,000. The incident took place during Gilder's apprehension on Interstate 10 in Chipley, Florida, following a robbery at a Tiffany & Company store in Orlando. Gilder, known for previous jewel thefts, eventually passed the stolen diamonds after a 2-week ordeal.
Fire in the hole!
Facing robbery and grand theft charges in Florida, Gilder also has an outstanding felony charge in Colorado. A Florida judge denied bail reduction due to Gilder's criminal history and escape attempts. You know, diamonds are made with intense heat and high pressure, but I'm sure this experience doesn't quite cut it. Yeah. At Aurora Zoo in Guatemala City, an elephant saved a gazelle from drowning in their shared enclosure's watering hole. The elephant used its trunk to pull the struggling gazelle out of the water after an initial failed attempt. Spectators captured the heartwarming rescue on film, cheering as the gazelle was safely back on land. This is not the first time an elephant at the zoo has acted as a lifeguard, with a similar incident involving another gazelle in 2022. A zookeeper swiftly intervened during that rescue. While the enclosure's water hole may need adjustments, visitors can rest assured that there is a large and vigilant lifeguard on duty. Or is there? I mean, is the elephant really a lifeguard? I mean, how do we know that the elephant isn't terrorizing the gazelles by pushing them in the first place? This could be a simple case of hero syndrome, like an arsonist firefighter who wants to put out fires. Or, in this case, the elephant just loves torturing gazelles. Yeah. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, Liquid Death, known for its canned water, is offering 10 empty iced tea cans that were consumed by Ozzy Osbourne and sealed to preserve his DNA. Dubbed Infinite Ozzy, each can is priced at $450 and available for purchase on the Liquid Death website. These cans, signed and laboratory sealed by Ozzy, he's a lab technician now? Anyway, coincide with Black Sabbath and Ozzy's upcoming final concert on July 5th in Birmingham, England. Liquid Death's campaign aims for fans to potentially clone Ozzy in the future using his DNA. The brand, recognized for its heavy metal associations, has previously collaborated with Ozzy on various products and marketing campaigns. Wow. That's all I have to say. Wow. On a completely different note about Ozzy, it's one thing to hear him sing, but it's another thing to try to understand him speaking. I've seen many an interview with him, such as this one with Conan O'Brien.
Before we started doing the show, he said, "Don't you want to come and do the show?" I said, "Sure." I learned more about Jack than I ever did when he was living at home.
Yeah. I get the feeling that if Ozzy ever did a TED Talk, you'd see the audience leaning forward in their seats with quizzical faces. And by the way, when he swears, crystal clear. Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program. Recently, I saw a news story that featured an innovative way to give both shade and power to open spaces such as parks without minimizing the footprint available to those who use the area. They are called acacias, which are named after the tree found in Africa's savanna. They are made by a renewable energy product developer and manufacturer called Solar Forma Design. Brian Graff is the CEO and co-founder of the company, and he joins us via Zoom from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Hi, Brian.
Peter.
Thanks for being on the program with us, sir. As I said, I caught this story just a little over a week ago, and I found these innovative. Since we're on radio, can you describe how they look and how they came to be in the first place?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We developed the idea after I had worked in the conventional solar industry for about 6 years, and I always came away from projects that we did very pleased with the technical results and the cost savings that we'd achieved. But sometimes solar is unsightly in the settings because it is built primarily on utilitarian designs with very little thought to integrate them into human spaces, and the aesthetics would need to be part of that. And so I started to think about it and was wondering if there was a way that we could marry art with technology and create something that was a little more amenable to human spaces and more complement. And it turns out that there was another entity out there that had been gathering sunlight and turning it into energy for a very long time, about 3.8 billion years, and that was Mother Nature. The acacia tree of Africa is a very iconic symbol of the African savanna and actually is perfectly adapted to doing just that, gathering a lot of sunlight, turning it into energy, yet keeping a very small footprint underneath. These become community gathering points on the savanna, not just people, but also for all species of animals and birds and things like that. So we decided to model our design after that, found a designer that could do it, and made it work.
And for those who haven't ever seen an acacia tree or also have not seen your acacia structures, people, by the way, should go to your website, which is solarformadesign.com, to get a look at how they are. For lack of a better term, they're sort of like giant beach umbrellas, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep, they have very broad canopies, very dense, small leaves that are perfectly adapted to capturing a lot of sunlight, yet they have a very small footprint underneath. Our acacia, our model of the natural model, has a 440 square foot canopy, yet the footprint that it takes is only 36 inches in diameter. And so it's very, very efficient. It allows, as you said in your opening, humans to utilize that space for whatever purpose they want. It casts a lot of shade. It creates a community gathering point, and it's just a very comfortable place to be. It's what landscape architects and urban planners like to call placemaker. It's the kind of structure, it's the kind of element that just makes a place where people want to live, work, play, and learn.
And the most important factor of this is on top of them, there are solar panels. So exactly how does the solar energy, how is it replicated? How is it turned into actual electricity for people?
Well, it's the magic of solar cells, except we use a special PVC-based cell. Each canopy has 708 6x6 solar cells embedded in it. They collect the energy and they just transfer it into what are called inverters and optimizers. And that's where the magic of turning sunlight into electricity takes place. They can be either standalone or they can be grid tied. The power can either be added to the grid, which the owners or the entity is drawing its power needs from, or it can be stored in a separate independent storage system, a big battery, and then drawn upon as needed.
Okay, so again, I saw a news story about this, and it was involving a park. So from that perspective, what was the park using the energy for?
Park is just using it to offset the energy demands that they have for lights, building facilities that they would have to heat or light in the winter. There's a lot of outdoor lighting there. There's a splash pad that has water coursing through it. So there's a pump system that needs to be charged. That energy that we're creating goes into the grid and just offsets what is being drawn from the grid in a net pricing effect that the park is doing just to run its facilities on a day-to-day basis.
Now, I also saw some people on this news story. I saw some people sitting underneath it, so they were also getting shade. I assume that there is also no danger in sitting under one, correct?
Absolutely not. I mean, all of the things, when you look at most ground-based arrays that cover a certain area, after they put the arrays up, the next thing that they put up is chain link fencing and sometimes barbed wire around it to keep people away. That's because the optimizers and the inverters and everything else that are, again, perform the magic of turning sunlight into electricity are openly accessible to them. We take all of that stuff and we tuck it safely under the canopies of the trees. Also, the cells themselves are unreachable because they're elevated above the populated area, and as a result, people don't come in contact with it, so they're perfectly safe and usable in all human areas.
Now, when I first booked you for doing this interview, I had a little chat with you, and you also mentioned some other things that could be of advantage to this system. For instance, people can sit underneath the canopy so they can get some shade, but there are some places that are very, very hot. You said there could be misters put into it as well, so it has an even greater cooling effect.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're working on a product form right now where we're pairing Mr. Technology with the trees themselves, and it's a rather easy marriage of those technologies. Misting has been used in the Southwest and in the warmer regions of our country and around the world to provide what's called active cooling in outdoor settings. It's a kind of a natural thing for us to pair these, and the combination of the shade and the misting technology together in the modeling that we've been doing produces what's called a thermal delta, a microclimate under the trees that is 20 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than the surrounding sunlit ambient air. And we're just starting to get those into prototype testing right now, but we're real excited because the opportunity there is immense. There's very few public redesign efforts, whether they're parks, whether they're schoolyards, any kind of outside human area that doesn't need to take shade into consideration and provide adequate shade for the users of that space.
Again, when I saw this feature, I saw not only the beauty of your design, but other applications other than parks and schools. I was immediately thinking of outdoor restaurants that had a seating area. And when I brought that attention to you, you conversed it to another thing that I'm up here in Canada that could be also used, and that is not only could you use them for misters, you could use it for heating, which means ski resorts, for instance, where people can be outdoors having a hot chocolate and not necessarily be cold.
Exactly. We can put radiant electric heaters underneath them. We're experimenting with that as well. That provides, downward focused radiant heat that can, again, create a microclimate under the trees that is quite a few degrees warmer than the outside ambient air. And normally you would view this and you would say, oh, that's really a wasteful use of electricity. But when the sun's shining on the trees, you're producing the electricity essentially free. And so just like cooling would be viewed as potentially wasteful, I remember my dad and my uncle always yelling at me to close the door when the air conditioning was on before I'd even opened the door. But when you look at it, the more sunlight that is hitting those panels, the more electricity that they're producing, and the more that we have to use to employ to make people comfortable and make these spaces usable, even in the hottest, the extreme heat events that we're experiencing.
I just thought of another idea. You live in Wisconsin. There are cold weather cities that play football. The Green Bay Packers, they always have heaters outside. What if they had these also?
They could potentially. There's an awful lot of people that attend the Green Bay Packer games, so I don't know that we could put enough trees up to shelter everybody. And
I'm not thinking about the fans. I'm thinking about the heaters that they have for the players on the benches, for instance.
It's an interesting idea. Well, I'm only about 2.5 hours from Green Bay, so next time I'm there, I'll present the idea to the Packers management and see what they think.
Admittedly, there's a certain cost to this, so it's not something that somebody's going to have in their patio in the backyard, but it's something that corporations, businesses, governments could have in public areas. There is, of course, a savings to this because of the solar electricity that they garner from this, but there is a cost to this, right?
There is. And we don't pretend to be or claim to be the cheapest form of solar on the market. The solar economy, if you will, is built upon almost a single metric, and that is ROI. At what point does my investment in the solar infrastructure I'm putting on my building or in my yard or at my home or wherever it might be, at what point does it negate the need to write a check to the electric company every month for my electricity usage? So where does it break even? We have a little different, our measure is not solely on the value of it, because the value of functional art, the value of elements of interest in human spaces, the value of creating gathering places, the light that we create, the Wi-Fi connectivity that we can generate, all of that stuff becomes part of it. And I kind of equate it to, if you looked at how people buy cars, if the only thing that mattered was miles per gallon, when people buy a car, then we'd probably all be driving Toyota Priuses and you would see very few other cars on the road. But that's not true. We all have different lifestyle needs. We all have to match our cars to the kind of things that we like, our activities in life, our family situations, whatever it might be. There's an awful lot of Toyota Priuses and other high mileage cars on the roads, but it isn't the sole reason that people go and select one car over another. Miles per gallon is one thing, as in solar, ROI is another. But the introduction of design, the ability to integrate this into people's lives and have it be something that protects green ethos is proving to be pretty important to people as well.
Very last question. When I talked to you earlier, you brought up a great analogy about how solar power is going forward in your design when you compared it to Edison's light bulb.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite metaphors or comparables, if you will. If the lighting industry had stopped innovating when Edison came up with his very first incandescent bulb that was hanging from a relatively austere wire hanging from a ceiling, and he flicked the switch on, and this newfound energy source called electricity was brought to bear, and that light bulb lit up the room, and it lit it up better than any candle, any lantern, even any of the gas lights of the time. And then our design and our innovation around that technology had simply stopped. We said, good enough, it's lighting the room, we're going to stop innovating, we're going to pay no attention to design. The functionality of that light migrated and became accepted to a point where now they said, hey, we can innovate around this. We can make this more interesting in our environments. This can be an element of not only illumination, but of design and mood and territory development or character development within a given space. We think solar can do that as well. And that's kind of the thought process that we're bringing it to. We look at telephones and cell phones the very same way. They migrated from being nifty innovations that were built primarily on utility to now something that has style, character, and adds multiple dimensions to our lives.
Brian, it's an amazing product that you have out. I hope people get a chance to see it and also experience it. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Quite welcome, Peter. Thank you so much.
Brian Graff, the CEO and co-founder of Solar Forma Design, the makers of the eCases solar-powered unit. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0827, and you'll find the link to their website, which I urge you to do if only to see not only how these units work, but also how beautiful they are. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
I met a microbiologist once. They're a lot bigger than I imagined.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffileprogram.
I'm standing and waving the flag for Canada. Hi, this is Mark Critch. I love hearing the sound of laughter. In fact, my job depends on it. But right now, the jobs of most Canadians depend on other things, like all of us coming together, buying Canadian-made products, and supporting Canadian businesses. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
Coming to you from Canada, the land of universal healthcare, colorful money, and the correct spelling of the word theater. This is The Stuff File with Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk about how you can do away with your self-sabotage. Plus, Stuart Nullman is in with another edition of Book Banter. We do have a morning shower thought coming your way, also an idiot of the day, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. And here's another case of idiots taking selfies, but this one isn't dangerous, just criminal. A museum in Italy is seeking a couple who caused damage to a delicate chair while attempting to take a selfie. The incident took place at the Palazzo Maffei in Verona, where CCTV footage captured a man sitting on the Van Gogh chair, causing it to collapse as a woman tried to photograph him. The unidentified couple quickly left the museum without reporting the accident. Museum director Vanessa Carlone expressed disappointment, stating that the couple did not take responsibility for their actions. The museum has involved the police, although it remains uncertain if the couple will face charges. The chair, adorned with Swarovski crystals, was created by artist Nicola Bola as a tribute to Vincent van Gogh's painting of a similar chair. No specific value has been disclosed for the damaged chair. Well, I hope that if they ever catch this couple and they go to court, during the proceedings, they're forced to stand. Yeah. A 42-year-old man contacted Beverly Hills, Texas police chief Corey Martin on June 13th about a package he had received from his ex-girlfriend. Inside was a copy of a marriage certificate indicating that the man was married, but he told Martin that while he had been in a relationship with the woman, that would be 36-year-old Kristen Marie Spearman of Waco, Texas, and even obtained a marriage license, they broke up before the wedding. After investigating, Martin determined that Spearman had convinced a pastor to certify the marriage without the groom present, and then filed a certificate at the county clerk's office. Martin said he researched the law and found only one scenario that allows for an absentee spouse-to-be. That would be active military overseas, unable to make it. And even then, you still have to have a proxy to stand in. So, in this case, the groom should have been there. Spearman was arrested for third-degree felony stalking and taken to jail. So, do they have to get an annulment, or does a potential guilty verdict kinda wash that aside? Meanwhile, I'd like to know more about the gullible pastor who signed off on this. Prior to Israel's secret plan to attack Iran, a surge in pizza deliveries around the Pentagon hinted at impending military action. An account known as the Pentagon Pizza Report noted a significant increase in pizza orders about an hour before Iranian state TV reported explosions in Tehran. Additionally, a nearby gay bar experienced unusually low foot traffic, suggesting heightened activity at the Pentagon. While not significantly proven, this phenomenon has been observed before, such as during Israel's 2024 missile strike on Iran. Similar spikes in pizza deliveries occurred before the U.S. invasion of Panama in 1989 and Operation Desert Storm in 1991.
Hey, you got plans coming up? Well, change them. Rearrange them? Because right now you can get one of my large Godfather's pizzas for the price of a medium.
Gee, I think we're saying pizza leads to war. This explains why my parents never let one into the house, and I never tasted a pizza until I was 19.
Pizza.
And we have one more story to get to before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And the bells signify that it's time now once again for the Darwin File.
I am a Grim Reaper. I am death.
A man is dead after crashing a snowmobile into a tree in the wee hours of the morning in Mason, New Hampshire. New Hampshire Fish and Game said around 2:15 a.m., conservation officers were notified of a possible deadly snowmobile crash on Old County Road. 37-year-old DJ Ducharme of Mason was operating his snowmobile when it went off the road at a high rate of speed and hit a tree. Ducharme was pronounced dead at the scene. He was not wearing a helmet. Speed, alcohol, and operating on a public way appeared to be the lead contributing factors in the crash, but it remains under investigation. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is this story in the Darwin File? Because, people get drunk and drive into trees all the time. Well, let's look at the facts. He was drunk, he was not wearing a helmet, and speeding on a snowmobile. And this was last Sunday. It's June. He's on a snowmobile in June. And that's why the tree of life is often self-pruning.
I have come for you. I am death.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuph File Program, shall we? Do you ever feel like you just can't get out of your own way? Dr. Philip Agrios says we are all born with a self-sabotage trait, and it holds many people back from their dreams. But he discovered an antidote that turns it off for good. After decades of research and personal experience, he has discovered a mechanism he calls the inborn sabotage trait. Phil is the author of Life's One Law, and he joins us via Zoom from New Jersey. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Peter. Nice to meet you. How's everything going?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. When did you make this discovery? Was this an aha moment for you? And were you someone who self-sabotaged?
Oh, I was the king of self-sabotage, man. I went through a lot of stuff, and the reason why I had to go through that I feel is that that's how I was able to break down whatever was in me to bring it out. And so, yes, this was over 30 years. It just didn't come to me. It started to slowly materialize. And when I first discovered it, I was like, there's no way. This is too simple. And so I went out to try to disprove it. And what I discovered and proved was that this trait is a biological trait. It doesn't undermine us. It actually protects us from the very success that we seek, because that success subconsciously stops us, because it's going to be more painful to achieve and to sustain. So we go back doing what we're doing over and over again. And then over the years of researching thousands and thousands of people over those 30 years, I found a way to switch it off instantly, and it works 100% of the time.
Now, when it comes to self-sabotage, is something or is someone all-encompassing in their self-sabotage? And the reason why I bring that up is I've met people who are excellent at their jobs but horrible in their personal lives, and vice versa. And I'm assuming that there's some self-sabotage regardless of which faction of their life is problematic. But why is it not all-encompassing?
It is, because self-sabotage is just self-protection. That's it. When you release your personal professional power and you hit that wall, that saboteur kicks in to protect you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not an idiot or a loser, all the 100 words we say to ourselves. We're just in protection. That's it. So imagine as you hit that wall, as you start to contract, as you start to feel uncomfortable, stressed, resistant, whatever that pushback is, that trait is trying to protect you. And as soon as you use what we call the TNow method, T meaning to transcend, the TNow method immediately allows you to transcend that and immediately go into growth, because it's the exact opposite of what you are trying to protect yourself from. So again, self-sabotage is just self-protection. We are born with this, and then the traumatic the traumatic events and everything else that comes your way is there to help you to understand how you are protecting yourself and how to find this TNow method, or what we call the antidote, to help you move forward.
Can you see this trait in other people? And the reason why I ask that is, can parents see this in their children?
Absolutely. I cannot tell you how many people we've had, our clients, we teach them also how to understand this trait in others. We've had parent-child relationships change, even with teenagers, right? Those of you who have teenagers, teenage-itis, right? I call it. Yes, we have seen shifts. We help save divorces. We've helped business partners help people to understand, managers understand their staff, and the staff to understand their managers. So yes, you can understand why you went through everything that you went through, why those people did what they did to you, because they were just protecting themselves from you and vice versa.
So what's the first step in understanding if you're somebody who self-sabotages, or what's the first step in somebody that you love who you see this trait in?
So the trait is always there. Again, as soon as you feel any type of resistance, stress, worry, anxiety, anything of that, anything that's out of your flow, you are in protection. So you are, quote, self-sabotaging yourself, or you're protecting yourself from that situation. For instance, we've had couples, right? They were on the bridge of divorce. And then all of a sudden, by they understanding each other's traits, they understood that they still loved each other. They were just protecting themselves from each other. Bring children involved in that. Once you understand the dynamic and why people are arguing or conflicting with each other, it's just because of protection. It is that simple. That's why it took me 30 years to really prove this, to really understand that any time that you are not finishing a task, anytime you don't express it verbally, right? Every time when you overly give to people, all those things that you're doing instead of being in the flow and being in harmony with yourself and others, you're in protection, and you're using this biological self-sabotage trait to help protect you.
Is one of the traits of inborn sabotage, is that the imposter syndrome?
So the imposter syndrome is the end result. It's depending on the person's sequence. So there are actually 6 sequences that we discover. So there's only 6 people in the world. So each sequence can have imposter syndrome, but they go about it and they experience it differently in 6 different ways. So when you understand your protection, your sequence, you'll understand why you feel that you're not enough and things like that. So when I have clients, depending on who that person is in their sequence, I will instruct and talk to them in different words to one sequence to help them understand to overcome that imposter syndrome. But in another sequence, another person, I would talk different words to resonate with them on a subconscious level.
Okay, so what about procrastination? Is that
Same
part
thing.
of the same thing?
Yeah, procrastination, again, why are you not following through and actually doing this? It's because you're protecting yourself, because actually doing the job, actually causing yourself to follow through is more painful than go play video games or doing something less uncomfortable. So at that moment, depending on the person's sequence, will determine why they are procrastinating specifically. This is not general stuff. This is actually specific, where we'll show them why this has happened to them in the past, why it's happening to them now, and why it will continue to happen. So if I may say one thing.
Yep.
You never get rid of this trait. It's your protective trait. It would be stupid if you could, but you can't. So by you understanding how to dance with it, how to learn how to use it, so that you're not in that procrastination. Maybe you're doing procrastination because at that moment you're protecting yourself, but when you become aware, maybe you procrastinate only 5 minutes instead of 5 days or 5 months. So our goal is for people to understand it's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to do that self-sabotage. But by using the method, our TNow method, it helps you to close that gap faster so you can go back and continue doing what needs to be done so that you're not stuck.
You often hear interviews of actors who, when they're asked why did you take this particular role as opposed to that particular role? And often they say, well, because the role I'm taking or the role I took scares me. Is that someone who has found that trait and has worked with it as opposed to have it working against them?
Yeah, because what's happening is what people don't realize, you're not here on Earth for everything to go well for you, because you would never evolve. Adversity is how you evolve. So if you're always trying to avoid your fear or being uncomfortable, you are never going to evolve. It is through the adversities. You can see how many movies from people who have gone through adversity now, boom, they've evolved. Would you ever go to see a movie without a villain? There's always a villain. That's the adversity. That's where it allows life to be exciting and move forward. But when you understand that this adversity is really a benefit for you instead of a detriment, that's where the game changer comes into play. Use this and saying, why is this in my life? So one sentence people can ask themselves when they get stuck, why am I protecting myself at this moment in time? Why am I protecting myself at this moment in time? It is because of this or whatever, or it's what my mom said, or is what, whatever the case may be. And by looking at it and going, how can this benefit me through this? What can I do to move forward with this? And when people start to see that, that's when they start seeing that this is really helpful. This is for them to move forward so they can grow.
Your book is called Life's One Law. Why the title of that book, and what does it mean to you?
The reason why the book was written about 5-6 years ago was that I wanted to put out some of my discovery. And how this all started was I was able to discover 6 steps that nature uses to come back from her storms. And when I realized those were the same 6 steps that we use to solve any business or personal problem. And then when I looked at the steps and I put the opposite steps together, it actually created 3 basic principles of the universe. And we call them the director, the supplier, and the communicator, because that's all we do as humans. We supply, we communicate, and we direct. And then I realized those 3 traits are within us, and that's what really causes us to be who we are. So the book kind of goes through that whole process to understand how I was able to discover this, how I was able to prove this, and how we're helping thousands and thousands of people now.
Fascinating topic. And the book, again, is Life's One Law. Philip, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. Much appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a blast. Thank you.
Dr. Philip Agrios, author of Life's One Law. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0827, and you'll find the link to Philip's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Why is it that when you transport something by car, it's called a shipment, but when you transport something by ship, it's called cargo?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File Program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Latitude 47 degrees 14 minutes north. Longitude 84 degrees 39 minutes west. Location Montreal, Canada. This is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's time to crack a spine. The Stuff File presents Book Banter with Stuart Nullman. Once again, here's Peter Anthony Holder.
And Stuart is here once again with a very special edition of Book Banter because it's summer reading. Hi, Stu.
Hi, Peter, and I would like to start by paraphrasing a song, just one line, but I'm going to recite it, not sing it. So
Thank you very much.
Let's say that it's summertime and the reading's easy.
Yes, but you know, we've now passed the summer solstice, which means for all the pessimists out there, the days are getting shorter.
Yes, but very, very gradually.
That's true. That's true. So what do you have for us for our beach reading? Should one go to the beach?
Or the balcony, or maybe the pool side. I got 5 books to offer all you listeners out there that you could take along with you when you're having your summer vacation or a holiday or long weekend. So let's start with Ian Fleming. We love him because he's the creator of James Bond, but he was more than that. He was a journalist. He wrote a lot of articles that appeared in newspapers and magazines. Thankfully, the estate of Ian Fleming has decided to take a selection of his best journalism and put it into an anthology called Talk of the Devil. Like I said, it's a collection of writings and journalism that appeared in newspapers and magazines. The topics cover everything from travel to crime and espionage, World War II, short stories, and yes, he even wrote about James Bond. There's one article in the book called The Guns of James Bond. They haven't ignored his famous creation also. I've looked through it, and it's a wonderful collection of Ian Fleming, the writer, beyond Bond.
Interesting.
You're going to love this one, Peter. So it's called Talk of the Devil by Ian Fleming. It's published by William Morrow, and it's $30. Now, speaking of anthologies, we're going to talk about another one, but this time with Steve Martin. We know him for his famous offbeat stand-up routine back in the 70s and being a terrific comic actor, but Steve Martin is also an accomplished writer, and the proof of that is in a collection of new and previously unpublished articles, never before published pieces, and it's called Steve Martin Writes the Written Word. I love the title.
I've actually seen him on late night talk shows promoting this book. And I think one of the interesting things is one of the stories that he has in that book is a story that he has had in some corners of the United States banned. So it's interesting to see if the whole book gets into libraries in certain parts of the United States or if it's banned outright because of that one banned story in it.
I'm going to have to find out what the story is and see if it warranted such an action.
I'm not telling what it is. I'm sworn to secrecy.
Okay. But also, the collection also has the complete novella Shop Girl and selections from his Shouts and Murmurs column that he wrote for the New Yorker. There's one story I wish was in there. It was from his first book called Cruel Shoes, and it's the title story. It's very funny, but not for the squeamish.
Excellent.
Definitely not. So it's called Steve Martin Writes the Written Word. It's published by Grand Central Publishing, and it's also $30. Now, books by comedians, they always happen, they come and go, but one that caught my attention was by Nate Bargatze, who's probably one of the hottest stand-up comics today and is known as the nicest man in stand-up. It's called Big Dumb Eyes, and it's a collection of autobiographical stories from his hometown of Old Hickory, Tennessee to Hollywood. I was wondering what made Nat Bargatze so popular. Why is he such a hot comedian? I'm halfway through the book, and most of these stories are so laugh-out-loud funny. 2 of the ones that really stood out for me was one about his time in the knock-em-down competitive world of a church basketball league. That's right. And also, and only Nate could pull this one off, of how he failed bowling in high school.
And I have another background story to that particular book. The book is entitled, what again?
Big Dumb Eyes.
And his publisher wanted to change that title because Bargatze has a Southern accent. And when he was saying the title, it sounded from him like Big Demise.
He didn't want to have a sort of nihilistic kind of title.
And I think that's why on the cover of the book, if I'm not mistaken, dumb is in a different color.
Yes, you're right.
Yep.
You see, big and eyes are in white.
Exactly.
And dumb is in yellow.
Exactly. And I think that's why they did that, so that people in the South won't get the wrong title.
Get the wrong idea.
Yeah.
So it's called Big Dumb Eyes, and it's by Nate Bargatze. It's published by Grand Central Publishing as well, and it's $40. Now we're going to go into some couple of works of fiction. Let's go to the winning combination of James Patterson and former U.S. President Bill Clinton. This is the third presidential collaboration. They've done 2 thrillers that were #1 bestsellers, and this is the third one called The First Gentleman. And it deals with a person who's the first woman president of the United States, but her husband's on trial for murder. And to make things more interesting for her, it's an election year and she is running for a second term. But there are these 2 journalists in Washington, like a la Woodward and Bernstein, who go on the case to find out if the first gentleman is an alleged killer. And will his wife get reelected to the White House again? But you know what? I was very pleasantly pleased with the first 2 collaborations with James Patterson and Bill Clinton. They were really good books. I'm sure that The First Gentleman will be 3rd time's a charm.
Excellent. And what's the 5th and final book for our summer reading?
First of all, let me just say that the book is The First Gentleman, and it's published by Little Brown. It's $32.
Excellent.
Now,
yes,
for the 5th book, there's a Swedish blogger turned best-selling novelist. His name is Fredrik Backman. His books have been doing really well, not only in his home country, but across Europe and now in North America. They became #1 bestsellers as well around the world. I'm not going to talk about his new novel. I want to talk about his novel he wrote 10 years ago, and it's called A Man Called Ove. This book became a movie with Tom Hanks called The Man Called Otto, and it focuses on a curmudgeonly old man. His curmudgeonly manner gave him the nickname the bitter neighbor from hell. And it's up to this young couple with 2 chatty daughters who move in next door to this bitter neighbor from hell and somehow gradually break the shell to find out what makes Ove so grumpy. And the results are very hard.
Yeah, I've seen the movie with Tom Hanks, and it's a great little film.
Yeah, and well, you can't go wrong with Tom Hanks. And the book, it caught my interest while I was browsing, doing my usual Saturday afternoon browsing at Indigo. I think I'm going to pick that one up to make it part of my summer reading list.
You say that we can't go wrong with Tom Hanks. Do you forget the fact? I mean, we both worked at Just for Laughs. Do you forget the fact of the movie he did with Sally Fields as stand-up comics?
Punchline?
Yeah.
So there's sometimes a little bit of a bump in the road.
That was a crater in the road.
A very large one.
Yeah. Anyway, I interrupted you. This book is?
It's called A Man Called Ove. It's by Fredrik Backman. It's published by Atria Books, and it's $19.99 in trade paperback.
And very quickly, let's just list the 5 books for summer reading.
Well, it's Talk of the Devil by Ian Fleming. Steve Martin writes The Written Word by poor Steve Martin. Big Dumb Eyes by Nate Bargatze. The First Gentleman by James Patterson and Bill Clinton. And A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman.
And when you're not up to your neck in sand, where can we find you, Stuart?
Well, it won't take a lot of sand to bury me up to my neck, that's for sure. But you can find me in my web, my blog. You just go to stuartnumsgrapevine.wordpress.com, or my stories can be found also in Best Story. It's a long-form journalism website. Just go to beststory.ca, and there I am too.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Stu.
You're welcome, Peter. Now, where did I put that darn sunscreen?
Stuart Nellman with another edition of Book Banter here on the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
The Stuff File.
And we're just about a racetrack for this edition of the Stuff File program. We do have an Idiot of the Day coming your way. Plus, I've got a few more Stuff File news stories to share with you right here, right now. We often have a segment called Idiots in the Sky, dealing with people who cause havoc on commercial air flights. Well, here's a couple of stories involving people who haven't even left the ground. A Chinese national passenger at Italy's Milan Malpensa airport was set to board a flight on June the 8th when gate staff informed her that her bag exceeded the weight limit and additional fees would be required. The passenger reacted negatively, engaging in an outburst described as a toddler-style tantrum. Eyewitnesses, including airport police and airline personnel, observed the middle-aged woman rolling on the floor, waving her arms and screaming. I've actually seen this video. It's a hoot. At one point, she resorted to stomping her feet while lying flat on the ground. Ultimately, the passenger was reportedly denied boarding and rebooked on a later flight. What I want to know is, was she restrained for that later flight? Meanwhile, a 23-year-old Spirit Airlines passenger, John Charles Robinson, was arrested for making a fake bomb threat after missing his flight from Detroit to Los Angeles and being required to rebook. Authorities say Robinson called the airline and warned that someone would try to blow up that flight and carry a bomb through security. The FBI, bomb-sniffing dogs, and federal air marshals responded, grounding the flight, deplaning passengers, and searching the aircraft, but found no explosives. After his arrest, Robinson admitted to making the ominous call when confronted with the recording. He is now facing federal charges for conveying false information about a bomb threat. Yeah, he won't be flying for a while. And the Madison, Wisconsin Fire Department responded to a boozy blaze on June 15th. Someone reported an oven fire around 6 p.m. The caller told firefighters they had been cooking a turkey for about 8 minutes when the oven door blew open. First responders removed the oven from the apartment and the fire went out. They later learned the turkey had been marinating in tequila, and they believe the accumulated vapors from the alcohol were not properly vented from the oven, which caused the fire. No one was hurt, except the turkey. But then again, it was drenched in tequila, so it wasn't feeling any pain. Anyway, boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
A 42-year-old man sustained a gunshot wound in his back on June 15th as he and friends rode bikes through the Central Catchment Nature Reserve in Singapore. Nobody was hunting him. He was riding in an area restricted to the public and reserved for the Singapore Armed Forces live firing activities. Several large signs read, "Do not go beyond this point, living firing area, keep clear," and "Danger," illustrated with a skull and crossbones. At the time of the shooting, the SAF was conducting an authorized live firing activity. The man underwent surgery to remove the slug and is in stable condition. Now, why, oh why, would you and your buddies cycle through an armed forces live firing range when large signs are posted everywhere? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0827. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0827. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Before we go, we'd like to leave you with a helpful instructional message from the National Association of People Who Have Trouble Walking and Chewing Gum at the same time. Step, chew, step, chew, step, chew, step, step. I always screw it up.